Hello, everybody, and welcome to 30 Minute Thrive, your go-to podcast for anything and everything HR, powered by MRA, the Management Association. Looking to stay on top of the ever-changing world of HR? MRA has got you covered. We'll be the first to tell you what's hot and what's not. I'm your host, Sophie Voller, and we are so glad you're here. Now it's time to thrive. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We're really hearing more about mindful workplaces nowadays. So we thought we would take today's podcast to really think about this topic more in depth. So I'm here with Laura Ruby, Senior HR Business Partner and HR Business Advisor for MRA. And we're really going to talk about why mindful workplaces are trending, or what you really need to be aware of, what are some of the challenges that come along with it, and more. So Laura, thanks so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Sophie. I'm really pleased to be here. This is definitely a timely concept, I think, for a number of employees to consider, or employers to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we were talking about that. You're very passionate about this topic, and you've been working in HR for such a long time that this is kind of the perfect topic to go over today. So I think we should kind of start out with, what is a mindful workplace? Can you define it?
Yes, a mindful workplace is really a combination of factors. But as we look at, initiatives that people are working towards in that space, it's really developing an awareness of an individual's thought processes, their emotions, and their actions, and helping to enable them to laser focus on those and remove obstacles to productivity and really improving the workplace from a variety of different aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a part two to that question then, can you kind of describe what the whole concept of the mindful workplace really encompasses?
It's actually quite broad, and as we'll talk today, we'll touch on all of those components, but it's combining more Eastern philosophies about, issues of meditation or focus and concentration, breathing, as well as branching into mental health aspects that are, damaging workplaces right now, and helping individuals to cope with their own anxiety, stress, as well as other things like other issues they may be experiencing in relationships, finances, you name it. So it's kind of a very broad umbrella to discuss how the company can actually move forward with developing a healthier workforce.
Absolutely. I feel like it's definitely transformed throughout the years, where, in my opinion, I feel like employers didn't really talk about this kind of stuff as much as they do now. They didn't care as much about, providing all these resources and mental health resources and wellness resources to employees. So I think it's great we can kind of cover that and talk about it, and just the process and how it's evolved over the years too. So my next question then would be, do you have any practices that a mindful workplace can kind of, or what can you implement? What practices can you implement to create a mindful workplace?
I mean, it's all over the map, but I think what really companies that are finding great success with implementing mindfulness, they're starting small with programs available to the employees, like maybe yoga classes or chair yoga, breathing exercises, and some of those smaller components into helping the individual pause, evaluate what they're thinking, and to continue to stay that laser focus on what's in front of them, rather than all these other things that may be coming from, their personal life or other anxieties even. So really, it's starting small with courses or with activities designed to encourage that, as well as programs designed to work on employee health, physical and mental health. Things like walking programs or competitions within companies, where people compete on a physical level, to the mental health aspect and making sure their insurance programs incorporate mental health and it's available to employees, including EAP programs that have more counseling provided. So it's a very broad spectrum. Some of the larger companies are also implementing things like meditation rooms or Zen areas or places where it's calm and quiet. People can go take a break there and get recollected. So there are a number of things that people are doing to address it.
Yeah, those are all great examples, Laura. And I'm thinking about MRA specifically, some of the cool things we do with our wellness. Something I love in the summer, we'll kind of get a group of employees together and walk around. We have some trails around here in the Waukesha location. And that's just great to kind of take like a mental health break, take a walk, kind of reboot almost. And we also have a masseuse come once in a while, which is awesome. Yeah. That's a plus. So yeah, a lot of great examples of what organizations can do.
Right.
And I know, Laura, you talked about starting small. You don't have to implement this huge idea right away, but what other steps can be taken to create a culture that values and supports this mindfulness?
Well, that's a really good question. A lot of research out there is honed in on more so management effectiveness at exhibiting these behaviors and then having that trickle down effect within the organization. So many companies will start with training their managers on the basic concepts and helping them to modify their behaviors to help other people kind of follow along with this process. Because a lot of employees view that managers are kind of the key to their success in the organization. And if you have a manager that's being, micromanaging, to use the term, or, laser focus on what people aren't doing right, then that can really put a bad tone in the organization and cause employees more stress and anxiety. So the focus is really to train the managers first and then implement some of these programs for the employees to help encourage them, to take that step back every day, to, give themselves some additional breaks, so to speak, throughout the day. And so a lot of it, many programs that they'll design, they'll have some training programs initially at the beginning that are available to people. There are a number of mental health type applications or mindfulness applications that people can install on their desktop or their phone. So they encourage that as well as integrating a lot of training, maybe even utilizing their EAP to come in and talk about more stressful things that might be present for individuals, trying to work with children and, if someone is engaged with adult care at home and trying to manage those needs on both ends of the spectrum and how to kind of put that stuff aside and, let yourself focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but what about the physical workspace being designed to encourage this mindfulness? I know there's quiet areas,
Yes.
the massage room, but any other examples that you can give with the physical workspace specifically?
And I think this one is really important, and I find myself doing this every at least once a week, is decluttering your office and taking that time to organize it so things are not visually distracting you, but you have easy access to them. For example, I support several members as well as work on the hotline. So I have basically moved all of my materials out of the visual area. So I have a couple of computers set up on my desktop, and I tried very diligently to only have one computer on at a time. But, decluttering, moving things where they're easy to get to, but not in visual space, And, using calming colors, things you like to look at. I have a number of pictures in here with my grandchildren and, they're kind of behind the screen here, but, you can use the same concept in your own workspace, even if it's a cubicle or, things just to create that environment for you.
They're great examples.
As we mentioned, like setting up spaces where employees can gather that are comfortable. A number of companies have installed in their break room, they have like couches and easy chairs for people to sit in versus just the table and a more sterile environment. And as we mentioned, like having a Zen room or a meditation room or just a space that people can go into to have peace and quiet for a little while.
Yeah, I love those examples.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I would add to, for the quiet areas piece, at MRA, we have focus rooms, and those are something I definitely take advantage of on a day-to-day basis. And they're just quiet rooms you can go to, solo rooms, kind of gets rid of all the distraction and allows you just to kind of focus on your own work. So that's something that I really love about our physical workspace. But also the natural light too. I think having windows is so important, letting the sun come in, or the snow light, I guess, right now.
Right.
But yeah.
Even in the offices there in Wisconsin, the turkeys come up near the windows. And so you kind of get this natural break throughout the day, taking a step back to nature in a way to kind of disengage from work stress, personal stress, whatever it is. It's just get into a different environment.
Oh, definitely. Well, now that we've kind of talked about all the logistics of it, what impact does it really have on employees and business success too?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's staggering when you talk about the mental health aspect of this. There was a recent study done that nearly half of the employees that were surveyed, I believe it was a survey of 2,500 people, they had mentioned almost half the time that their mental stress or issues that they had, they brought into the workplace, and it affected their productivity. So this is a pretty serious area. When you have our high pressure environments, we have technology that is helping us to be more efficient, but can sometimes be a distraction as well. Those types of things can certainly affect productivity at work. You also see where employee absenteeism increases when you have people who are stressed or dealing with lots of issues with work. You have employee satisfaction and engagement, which is a huge factor in this as well. And it's highly impacted by developing those mindfulness practices. As the workforce becomes more engaged, you'll see other things like reduced absenteeism, higher productivity, and just a number of other things within the organization, especially employees, like best companies to work for. Those organizations where you see continue to be top, they're addressing all of these issues regularly.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I think it's also helpful to give some examples of wellness programs so that companies can start thinking about some ideas for themselves. So what wellness programs are in place to support employees' mental and emotional well-being? Any examples?
Well, there are a couple of other vendors that are out there that have websites that you can engage with, and they can provide things from training to other directed programs for the organization. A lot of companies can work with their EAP to bring in, again, some training as well as some other activities to help employees establish these programs. And really it's initiatives that the company needs to undertake at the outset. So the company is saying, we recognize that we need to improve mental health and well-being for our staff. They can begin to roll out some of those initiatives. So again, focusing on what components that they want to bring into their own culture, and being mindful as well as, how is work done at their company. One of the other things that I've seen a lot of companies engaging in is really looking at the effectiveness of how the job is built. So they may have a job description, but it could be that the person has too many duties or duties that compete for their time. So really restructuring those positions to be more effective. And again, working with some of those wellness providers to implement some of those programs. And really, if you're going to start, a good place to start is with your broker. When you're already getting your healthcare or different types of services into the organization, they can always get in contact with people they've worked with, and you can evaluate some of these programs as well. Mm-hmm. And then I think the next step is, in HR is, developing an RFP, contacting these vendors out there to see what services they can provide in that space. Mm-hmm. Because again, it's going to be a balancing act of financial commitment on the company. Do you have the space to implement some of these ideas? And then again, I think the other important aspect is surveying employees to actually find out what it is that they would be interested in participating in. I think that's another survey fact is that, companies feel they're, about 60% of the companies feel they're doing a great job at wellness, but you ask their employees and they're like, nah, I'm not participating. I'm not really, those things aren't of interest to me. So really they need to get that feedback from the employees of what's going to work for me as an individual. And then using that data to style a lot of the components of the wellness program.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up. Absolutely. You talked about that stat with how mental health impacts productivity. So I'm wondering if you're kind of seeing anything else here with how mental health really impacts that productivity at work.
If you look company to company, it's going to be a little bit different. But I think, if you were thinking about mental health, there are a number of programs designed to work with employees. You're providing additional counseling services, maybe through your EAP, so you're paying for more services available to employees, helping them with financial wellness, helping them to work with their retirement programs and really plan for the future, and other programs that the company can set up to really help support unexpected financial things that crop up with individuals, and really gearing those programs to help minimize the anxiety, the stress, that comes with doing with those day-to-day activities. Childcare is another area where, again, it's a huge worry for people with children as to how they're going to, provide support, have the right resources available to them. What happens when your child's sick? How will you deal with that? So a lot of those focuses can help minimize stress for people and allow them to step away from that and be able to refocus on the work.
Mm-hmm. And I think going off of that, work-life balance, when you're talking about kids, spending time with them, that's where the work-life balance kind of also comes into play here. So
Absolutely.
We actually had a whole podcast alone on work-life balance. So it's definitely important and something, everyone wants. So do you have kind of any suggestions for employers and how they can help balance work-life balance for their employees?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that a company can do. One we've already talked about is really evaluating the jobs and how they're being done. Are they being done effectively? Because a lot of work stress comes from that very aspect, that my job is too demanding in one area, or I don't have the right tools to get the job done, or there may be other efficiencies that could be developed to remove that stress. Other things like creating flexible hours so people can stylize the hours so that it best meets their personal needs. So they have to do, take kids to school and pick them up at the end of the day. They can work their work schedule around that. Hybrid workplaces are also really helpful in addressing that. So identifying when you want your staff in at work, but allowing a few days where they can work from home if that's possible. With a manufacturing environment, it might be implementing, 5-minute breaks in the manufacturing area, or some other ways to stagger breaks so that people can step away a little more frequently throughout the day versus just confining it to maybe a 10 or 15-minute period with a meal period. So there's a lot of things that companies can evaluate that would work in their environment and again contribute to some of that work-life balance. And additional resources. I think that's the final thing. Companies can use their buying power, so to speak, with providing programs for elder care, child care, some of these other aspects of life. I know of several companies I work with now, they even have dry cleaning, where you bring the dry cleaning into work and they take it up and have it done for you and bring it back.
That's awesome.
So, and utilizing tools like, ordering your groceries online and picking them up on the way home. So there's a number of things that you can, coach and counsel people on here. Why don't you try a few of these things and see how they work for you, to help impact that, that flexibility that we're trying to develop in work.
Yeah, what's going to make their life easier, right?
Yes. I'd like to drop on my laundry and have somebody take it.
Get that done. Something I read about when I was kind of researching for this topic today was holistic well-being initiatives. So things that kind of encompass physical, mental, and emotional health. So what are some initiatives employers can implement around here?
Well, and that's, again, if you take a step back to look at all of your wellness programs, what are you offering today and what can you bring in? There are a number of programs that you can develop that are a little more integrated. So you can say, here, I want to create a program about, balancing workflow. And so things where you coach them and say, hey, when you get into work, take 5 minutes at the beginning of work to just kind of arrive and be at your desk. Don't check your email, save your email review for maybe 20 minutes into the job, or implementing, there's a technique called the Pomodoro technique where you divide up your time into 25-minute increments and you take just a slight break between them. So you just only focus on one thing for 25 minutes, take a break, next thing, take a break. So if you're implementing, if you're doing project management, you can build that into it as well. So, and I think just really being open-minded as an employer as to what options might be out there. And again, this is where the survey tool can come in handy, is to help isolate, what are things that an employee is interested in. And really, I think what inhibits a number of employees from participating in their wellness initiatives at work is sometimes the time. If you're hosting a 1-hour training course, many employees won't attend because they're like, I can't carve out an hour. But if you break that down to 15-minute, 20-minute sessions, you'll see that your attendance rate increases. So again, you're really trying to find what's the sweet spot for what you're offering and how your participation is in that program. And then doing follow-up surveys, do they find that useful? Now that they learned about this topic, what other topics would they want to consider as well? Yeah. So but it's again, taking that holistic, broad approach. It's not just one solution, but there are many aspects to it, and finding the balance for your organization and your employees.
And I would just emphasize what you said on surveys and employee surveys, and MRA can help you with that. We have employee surveys. We can help you with custom surveys. So I will make sure to add the link in the show notes. So if you do want to check that out, absolutely go for that. But Where I feel like a lot of managers or leaders may be asking the question right now, how do you know this is having an impact on your employees and your organization?
Yeah, actually, using metrics, you can implement a lot of metrics within your own organization to measure. First, I would suggest doing a baseline so you can see, what does our attendance look like? How often are we missing deadlines or other aspects within um, the organization, absenteeism, utilization of PTO. All those things can give you an overall view of where do we sit today. Even surveying employees again, have you utilized these benefits? Getting a baseline on where the effectiveness of the program is today. And then as you move forward with these components, putting them out one by one by one, you can measure again through the survey information, how did that work? Is this improving things? Long term, maybe annually you look at absenteeism rates and see how that's been affected, or turnover statistics is another one. So as you see absenteeism rates starting to decline, people lower turnover for the organization, and all of these are indicators of some components of success to the wellness. But I think again, I keep harping on it, that surveys are a really good way to pinpoint, has this been affected? Or you can use exit interviews for people who do leave the organization and find out, were they using the wellness benefits? Is there something that could have helped them prior to their making the decision to leave? And then again, employee feedback about their managers. Because again, we talked about this all starts with leadership. And has a trickle-down effect, and identifying leaders that maybe need some additional support as well in their managerial style or their behaviors that they exhibit. So these are all ways that you can say, yes, we've evaluated, we have some statistics to look at, and how are we performing over time.
Yeah, sounds like there's a lot of indicators and tools out there to help you kind of measure that impact.
Absolutely, yeah. And even some of those mobile applications that people are downloading and using within their organization, they'll store information that can then be reported back to the company about utilization, and maybe help identify some other areas that people might want to expand and build their program.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we kind of close out the episode today, is there one thing that you want our listeners to really take away from today's episode on mindful workplaces?
I know it's a lot, and there are a lot of stigmas associated with meditation or doing yoga at work or a lot of things like that. But recognizing that there isn't a one fits all sort of solution, that it's got to be customized to your workplace, and really being connected with your employees to be able to get that feedback about what is going to help them. Really, mindfulness is a journey that's about me as an individual first, and then company as a company, how we're going to provide resources and tools for each individual in the organization. So those, keeping that in your mind, it will help you to develop these programs, again, mindfully, and to help the employees, get the things that they need to help reduce their stress, their anxiety, really focus back on work.
For sure. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being our guest on today's topic and sharing all of your expertise, because I know you have so much in this area. I think everyone can really walk away with a lot of great new ideas and action steps that they can take to create a mindful workplace if they haven't already. But to our listeners listening and watching, if you liked our chat and our topic today, I would encourage you to share this episode out and consider joining MRA if you aren't a member already. Like I said, we have all the resources you need in the show notes below, and we have resources on this topic too, so make sure to look at the show notes. And thanks for tuning in. Laura, thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next week. And that wraps up our content for this episode. Be sure to reference the show notes where you can sign up to connect for more podcast updates. Check out other MRA episodes on your favorite podcast platform. And as always, make sure to follow MRA's 30-Minute Thrive so you don't miss out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next Wednesday to carry on the HR conversation.